This is Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of BC, brought to you by Sitka Gear. Come along as we bring conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Precision Optics. Thank you Sitka Gear and Precision Optics for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems. All right, we're back on the airways today for a great episode of Talk is Sheep. We've got Charles from HOWL for Wildlife with us today. Charles is the founder and executive director of HOWL for Wildlife, and without question, Charles has been recognized now as one of North America's leading voices for hunters, anglers, conservationists, anyone who believes in the stuff that we believe in, science-based wildlife management, North American model of conservation. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of great movements that have been happening on our side of things. And HOWL for Wildlife was built from a grassroots movement that connects people to conservation issues, something that I feel like we've been severely lacking in the conservation space. We've been doing a lot of great work on the ground, but some of these conservation issues, a lot of them relating to ballot box, politics, and that world that none of us really want to get involved in, wildlife policy. Charles has been leading the charge on that, done a fantastic job. So he's been busy defending hunting and fishing opportunities to help educate the public on complex wildlife issues like many of these are. And Charles has been at the forefront of some of those most significant conservation conversations happening today, and it's ongoing. So anyone paying attention will have noticed that HOWL was just down in Colorado delivering signatures to move forward there on some important issues. Has been doing a lot of work in Oregon. I've been following the work that you've been doing on IP28. So a lot of really important things that are going to affect the future of the things that are important to people that are in the sustainable use community, hunters, anglers, and others. So really stoked to have you on. Of course, we've got our trusty co-host, guest co-hosting again today. So Jann Demaske. Jann, welcome back. So Charles, Jann, welcome to the podcast. Stoked to chat today.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. That was a very humbling introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, Charles, there's so much going on, man. It's phenomenal. And you just been, I look around, I'm like, hey man, this guy's doing it all. And we got to get on the show and chat about it. And I think there's so many things that we're like, yeah, we need more of what you're doing there. So really excited about so many of these movements and things that you got going on.
Thank you. We definitely have a lot. We definitely have a lot going on. I don't know which one you want to start with, but it's a fun ride. I was just talking to somebody the other day because generally I'm hunting all the time. I guide and I also hunt, and like I grew up hunting my entire life. And I told him, I said, I've had a lifetime, 48 years, well, not quite 48 years, but almost, of hunting. And I really, because our season just started here in California. We have a very early season that started last Saturday. It's an archery season. And he's like, are you getting out? And I said, no, I'm not even ready. I haven't shot my bow since November. And I said, man, you know what I'm doing? I said, I love what I'm doing. Like, it's just, I need to focus on this kind of stuff. I love this. And I know we're going to get some big wins and there's some momentum. And I just want to be a part of it. I can be a part of hunting whenever I want. The actual, action of hunting. But doing this kind of stuff is it's where it's at for me right now.
Charles, maybe let's touch a little bit on that to start. And it's interesting. You started this off kind of 5 years ago. I don't think you, from what I understand, based on the little research I've done, is that you never woke up, you never, came of age and said, I want to lead the charge to save wild, like hunting. I get the impression that you had a bunch of stuff on the go. You're an entrepreneur. And obviously you love the outdoors and the hunting, and but I don't think this was your vision. And then all of a sudden now, like, you are at the center of some of these most important issues, but it wasn't really like, it wasn't one of those things where as a young kid, you're like, oh, this is where I want to go. This is my dream. This is my vision. Maybe talk a little bit about that journey of how all of a sudden you've ended up right in the middle of these most important issues that are going to affect almost every hunting and outdoor enthusiast possibly forever, with these major changes. And if some of these initiatives go forward, like a piece with the IP28 deal in Oregon, or many of these other issues you've been involved in, it's going to permanently affect people. And all of a sudden now you're leading that charge. Talk about maybe that journey and then where you're at right now. And what you said resonates with me because I feel the same way. I'm like super passionate about what I'm doing. It's like sometimes like, shit, I should be out in the woods chasing animals. You're like, yeah, but this needs to be done. And it's so important. And I'm so excited about and I want to make a difference. So I'd love to hear your journey there.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I definitely absolutely never saw myself doing what I'm doing now. HOWL was started as a reaction to solving a problem, really. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, so I guess like my mindset is just solving problems, and and sometimes I can create a business out of it. Obviously, this was a little different. HOWL for Wildlife is a nonprofit. It's something that I don't pay myself for at all. I've never taken a dime for this. It originally started because the way hunters generally connected with legislators and commissioners was just archaic. And I saw it because we had a bill here in California, and I was like, this is just dumb. Like the way that I'm supposed to connect to these people, there's a better way to do it, for sure. I felt like the technology was 20 years old. So I'm not a software engineer, but I love software and I love technology. So I just got on the phone and said, hey, can we change this a little bit? Can we make this a little bit easier? And basically the ask was, I want to make sure when somebody sends an email to a decision maker, a senator, a commissioner, and a MP, right, in Canada, is that what they're called? Yeah, because we've done a lot in Canada. I want to make sure they're not getting the same message over and over and over again. I want to make it, how do we personalize this? Because I talked to legislative staff and they've told me when they see these form letters, they don't carry a lot of weight. And if most folks aren't calling, if most folks aren't showing up to commission meetings in person, most folks are sending in emails. How do we give a little more weight to that? So that's what I saw was anybody, it could be 10,000 people if they send in 10,000 messages, to the Florida State House or whatever. Every message is different. It basically gives you an opportunity to either take what's there, like the pre-written message, or you can edit it yourself, or you can, or you can edit yourself. But the thing is, stats show most people just don't edit it themselves. So we made sure every subject line was custom to you. Every email body was custom to you. And it actually came from your email address. It didn't say, like, typically I would read these things and say, I'm a member of such and such organization. And it would talk about the organization and then kind of give the message. It just looked cheap to me. So that's how HOWL started, was like, I want to work in the background. I want to give organizations the ability to be more effective in that space, right? That ended up being really effective, almost to an extent so effective that it got to the point after 2 or 3 years that I had to start testifying I think I've testified in 3 different states. And I think one of them's still a lawsuit right now in Montana, where they kind of, unfortunately, commissions will base decisions off of how much public feedback they get. HOWL was beating everybody. The anti-hunters, and you know what I mean? And so folks, mostly anti-hunters, would say, and actually I think it was Samantha Miller with Cats Aren't Trophies in Colorado did this as well. She sent out an email saying, hey, these emails you guys are getting here, these are bots. These aren't real people. So I had
in Colorado, we started, starting our emails with, I'm a real person. Here's my, because she had people convinced that, we weren't real people.
Yeah. So because it was so effective, and folks on that side hadn't actually seen this type of connection before, right? So they doubted it, and they still do. So then I switched over to, okay, can I have people record a video on the same platform and send in a minute-long testimony because that's a real person, right? I mean, I guess you could say that's an AI. Now you could say that's an AI avatar or whatever. But, you know, it's like, it's kind of a game to me. It's fun. It's silly when it's fun, but it's also silly when hunters do show up, when sportsmen and women do show up, and then their voice is throttled down by, or some are attempting to throttle it down. Like, hey, you said you wanted to hear from us. Now you are. Oh, now it's too much. Like, now this isn't real. Now this is bot. So, I've had to do a lot of testifying on that and show the legitimacy of it. And I mean, it's easy to prove, right? But I think in the midst of all of that, I've just met, I don't know how many states I've worked in on these types of actions. I've met, you know, leadership in those states. I've met policy directors in those states. And then they always need more help on other issues as well, right? Because of this, we've built a pretty large grassroots database and a fairly large, I guess, in the hunting space with what we do, a fairly large social media following on Instagram. So with that comes more opportunity, right? With that comes the opportunity to tell people like the importance of actually showing up to a commission meeting or actually showing up to a legislative hearing in person. The importance of, hey, here are the leaders in your states. Or, I mean, I'll take one example. When Prop 127 came on the scene, it was October 2023 is when Dan Gates had first reached out to me. And I'd known Dan from, I don't know, a few years before. I think there was a mountain lion bill actually in 2022 that we worked on. And he reached out. But at the time, CRWM wasn't on social media. Dan had never been on a podcast. And this was Prop 127 was going to be a big deal. It was going to be in the public. It was going to be a public vote. We needed to match that by being in the public as well, right? Most folks, I reached out to people in Colorado, and I don't want to say most because I don't know that, but a lot of folks were like, I've never heard of CRWM. I've never heard of Dan Gates. And then Dan, I remember him saying, does social media work? Like, you know, should I get on a podcast? I was like, Dan, if anybody should get on a podcast, it's you. Like you're so articulate, and he can spell these things out so much better than I can, and so much better than most people that I know in this space. Like, I feel like we need leaders that can break down the issues like he can. And that's one of the issues I think that we face. He can do that very well, for sure. So we helped kind of make that connection, and supported, you know, the questions that he just had personally, like, how do I do these things? So in early 2024, we started going to all the shows, you know, Western Hunt and the Sheep Show in Reno, and, you know, just all the shows around the United States. And I just introduced him to everybody that I knew. Hey, this is Dan. I remember in Vegas at SHOT Show, introduced him to the Go Hunt guys. And I saw Lorenzo just walking in the car. I was like, Lorenzo, hey, it's Charles at HOWL. He goes, hey, what's going on? I go, dude, I want to introduce you to somebody. And here's what this guy is doing. He's like, okay. And Lorenzo was like, all right, who are you talking about here? And him and you know, I introduced him to Dan, and from there on, they connected. They really took the messaging, you know, to, hey, let's get you on podcast. Let's raise some money for this cause. Let's talk about it. And so on and so forth, you know, just those types of introductions. So I guess what I'm talking about here is, this is also what HOWL does. This is what I love to do. And Jann brought it up, I think in the intro, or maybe it was before we started recording. I love connecting people. I'm definitely not the best at everything, but I have a pretty good mind about recognizing leaders and recognizing people who can get things done, and then bringing those folks together so we can work together. Because ultimately, that's I think what we need in our space and in our industry is a little more unity, and also the best of the best working together to get things done, because we're all facing the same issues, but we all kind of fight them separately sometimes, and that I don't think that's efficient. I don't think that's very effective. It's not as effective as it could be.
Yeah. Really well.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We could spend an hour on like 3 issues that you just raised there. On each one of those, we could have 3 1-hour podcasts on them.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% with you, Charles. And I think today, like, I know we want to talk about IP28 because I want our members to understand the long game there, what's going on. And just, I know you're working on a film there in Oregon. What's the drop date on that? When's that going to be released? Ish.
I'm shooting for the final edit to be July 26th, I think. And then
awesome.
And then from there, we are either going to premiere it in person in Oregon as soon as we can. We're working with a few different partners to figure that out. Or we'll just put it on YouTube and collab with some pretty big hitters to get that out. I'm not sure, but it should be done this month, which is awesome. Today's July 15th, so it should be done very soon. Yep.
So there's 2 really big movements that are happening right now. We've got stuff going on with IP28 in Oregon, and we've got what's going on in Colorado with, I guess, the collaboration with IOTR and the constitutional right to hunt and fish. And that's kind of a movement. And I obviously see you guys playing a big role in that moving forward as we ideally bring that to every state in the union, and ideally bring that north to Canada here. I've reached out to Travis through Jann to have that conversation as well about bringing that to Canada. A different mechanism. As you know, Canada's its unique species. It's not quite the 51st state just yet. I like to joke about that one. But that there is an opportunity there and work to be done here. So I want to deep dive into those 2 and really get a good understanding. And then maybe what we see on the horizon. But I think the one thing I really want to dive into today, and let's address these 2 issues in those 2 states first. But then I really want to talk about what can we do as like sustainable users, hunter, conservationists, anglers, anyone in this sustainable use community to advance that movement, because we have so many issues. And I agree with Charles. Like, I've been yelling for a decade. Let's all get on the same page here. And we're all sort of slowly getting there, but we're kind of fumbling around. And I think we need that cohesion, that leadership to move us in that direction. And I got so many different ideas, and some have worked, some are half worked. None of them have been out of the park. But I think, the big thing is like, how, because like we said, with One Campfire, that's something that we've been working on for close to a decade now. And it's exactly what you're talking about. And we recognize that need. So how do we move to that next step? And again, it's just industry buy-in. We need everyone on the same page. And it's everybody. Anyone that thinks it's hunters or it's, anglers. No, it's the firearms community. It's industry, right? Anyone that makes a living off selling anything to a hunter is going to be affected by this. And honestly, it's much bigger than that, because we look at what's going on with IP28 and they want to take away farming, agriculture. So really, like, frickin' John Deere should be giving us money to sort of promote, this sort of stuff, for example, right? And honestly, I think there's a valid argument for that, right? It's not limited, there's always the low-hanging fruit. There's the hunter, there's the trappers, probably the lowest hanging fruit, like, and grizzly bear and hunting and all that stuff. That's the low-hanging fruit. And then it just kind of works its way up. And, anglers are sort of a little higher up on the tree, but they're not off the menu. But just keep going up. Like, where does it stop? Like, if you're killing something, if your movement, and again, like, as you erode all these things, and we've got hunting out of the way. Okay, angling's out of the way. Where does it stop? Like, okay, well, is it now roads or industry or like whatever? There's just no limit, right?
Well, we really need to take the page from the anti-hunting community, because they work very well together. And our daughter Maddie attended the CITES convention in Panama a few years ago, and she said it didn't matter if they were conserving sea cucumbers or various wood species in Africa. They were a united front. They didn't care if it was, who it was. So the wood species guys were helping the sea cucumber guys. And that's what we need to do. We need to collaborate. That needs to come out of our mouth more than probably any other word. Collaborate, connect, conservation, the 3 C's. We'll come up with some catchy phrase.
I think it's there's a lot of things going on right there, but I'm not waiting any longer. I'm not waiting anymore. So I've been aware, like, yeah, we have to do this, and I kept saying we, and it's like, all right, there's never going to be a point in time where everyone just goes, okay, we're all going to do this now, right? So, I take a lot of, I don't need to go down this rabbit hole, but I take a lot of the inspiration for what I think needs to be done from kind of what has happened in the intelligence community in the United States. All of those groups, CIA, FBI, the NSA, and the special forces groups and all, they all used to work independently of each other, right? They would collect intelligence and not share it. And it's crazy, right? For the benefit, the idea is for the benefit of the United States, right? But they would work independently. They would show up to missions and go, what are you guys doing here? What are you doing here? Kind of a thing. So JSOC was formed, Joint Special Operations Command. And that was to bring all of it together for a better mission, for a better purpose, right? To be more effective. So lead from the front is one of the kind of, sayings, I guess, that comes a lot from the military. And I think that's what we've decided to do. Like, when we need things to be done, we're just going to go ahead and do it. So I think, to answer your question before, like, why are we so involved in things? How come we're kind of at the center of this? Because we're just like, we're just going to do it. We're going to be really intentional. We're going to ask more for, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we want to accomplish. We need money for it. The IP-28 film is a perfect example of that. I didn't want to go in kind of with no budget at all, kind of like what I did with Catalina Island, and just, we'll throw some stuff together. I wanted to go in like a really good film crew, a great production company, and make something that's really going to have a huge impact and look good, and we'll be able to market it differently and all that sort of stuff. So I went to, and this is nothing new, I guess, but for me it was, we never asked for money or anything. And I went to a bunch of different companies, and people have told me, like, oh, they're not going to give you money for that. I'm like, well, I think they will. And I think the reason was, it wasn't just like, I don't need money to just make a film. It's about the opportunity that IP-28 is giving us. IP-28 is giving us an opportunity to address all of these issues that you're talking about. IP-28 is giving us an opportunity to, maybe get John Deere involved, because it's such an opportunity. Because for the first time that I've ever seen, farmers and cattlemen and small producers and people who just raise food in their backyards, meat, vegetables are still fine, but, rabbits or chickens or sheep or whatever in their backyards, the grandparents who want to take their grandkids fishing in the pond or the lake or out in the ocean, or commercial fishermen, or, Samantha, who's a soccer mom, who's 35 years old, who has never hunted or fished. Maybe she fished when she was 12, but she likes to go to the farmer's market and get locally raised, lamb, right? Or she likes to go to Newport, Oregon, on the coast, and get salmon that was just caught off of the ocean, off the coast of Oregon. She likes that because she thinks it's healthy, because it is healthy. All of those people, besides hunters and anglers, they're all they've been forced on our side now, because IP-28 has laid out all the cards. It started with the end game. It's not just taking away trapping. It's not just taking away bear hunting. It's not just taking away spring bear hunting. and death by 1,000 cuts. They started with, here's the end game. This is what we want to get to. So we have the biggest opportunity to tell a story that needs to be told desperately to everybody, right? And we are only going to gain support because of this. We're not going to lose support. So, doing things like this and going to the companies that gave us money for this, that made sense to them. They were like, yeah, we track with that mission. This isn't just putting out another film that hunters can watch. This has some real purpose to it, right? And beyond that, like the bigger picture, to answer your question, like what it is we can do, what it is that we should do, I look at it as a whole. The hunting industry, just itself, is $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar a year industry, right? We can figure out a way. And this is one of our kind of, I think the right to hunt and fish in Colorado is one of our Pittman-Robertson moments. But there's another angle to that too. Like, do we want another Pittman-Robertson moment? We can figure out a way where we basically funnel some amount of money into a program where when you turn on the Super Bowl, when you watch World Cup, when you're on the subway, when you go to the airport, whatever it is, when you go into a metropolitan area, there is messaging framed that's designed to engage the middle ground, the non-hunting public. There's commercials that say something really strong about conservation, and it's designed to make people curious. It's designed to make people go, is that true? Is that real? Because they have absolutely never seen anything like that before, ever. So I'm tying that into a long game. Like, we have to start the conversation. I'm not afraid of the conversation. We don't have anything to be afraid of. Like, what happens is we're always drawn into somebody else's turf. We're always on the defense, right? And like Prop 127, it was all about trophy hunting, right? It was all about, oh, you guys don't even eat mountain lions anyways. It was all about, we had to just defend against all of these things. The public had no, like, we've never put out any type of information out there, anything previously that challenged that is at all, right? So the anti-hunters have it really easy because they don't see anything coming from us. You know what I'm saying? And they get these narratives across, and they'll connect A plus B equals C. It'll make sense on paper if you don't know any better. But if the public doesn't know, well, the rules actually say this, the laws actually say this, here's actual stories from hunters, like, they're not challenged. We have to challenge the public. So then when they see BS like that come from, groups that put on Prop 127, they go, no, that's not true. Like, our state, for one, has a law against that. They're trying to trick me. That's the problem with ballot box biology. Facts don't matter. Like, it's all just a commercial. It's persuasion. It's who has the most money to persuade the most amount of people to vote this way. Facts, they don't matter at all. We've completely politicized wildlife in that aspect, where it's just a stump speech. You know what I mean? Which is ridiculous. That's absolutely what we like. If we don't think that we can't get across that to the general public, why that's a bad idea, because wildlife's good for everybody, right? Like, that's the kind of, I know I'm kind of ranting here, or maybe going on, hopefully you understand what I'm saying, but that's the kind of stuff, that's the ideas I think that we need to carry forward. And that's where we need to we have to find a way to put money into those avenues. Like, I don't know, what if we just for starters, if we had $25 million a year to focus on select cities or select areas to put this messaging out there. The cool thing about it is we don't have to do it in all 50 states. We live in a world today where media reaches the entire world. So you do something in one state, you do something in one, do something in Los Angeles, and you make it big enough, that message is going to carry over, right? It's not like it's just going to stay in Los Angeles. It's going to have wide, broad reaching effects. I think that's the big thing that's missing, is that type of mentality, that type of outreach, that type of like aggressive marketing, I guess, if you want to call it that. And I want to be clear, this isn't to create new hunters. New hunters that's a decision people can make on their own. This isn't an R3. This is like going way beyond R3. This is getting people to understand what hunting is and be okay with it existing, right? Because that's really the problem we're facing is like, it's not that we don't have enough hunters. I mean, that's an impossibility to get enough hunters to become a majority of voters. The problem we're facing is hunting isn't understood. And when things come to the ballot, or things come to, a legislative bill, the general public is either swayed one way or the other. And it's all based, to me, from what I can see, it's based on misinformation. It's based on a false narrative. So we have to kind of attack that. And when you look at recent, the past 20 years of, say, ballot box initiatives, things that have been on the ballot box, the difference in like the voting percentage, it's always like 1, 2, 3%. So we're not even talking about huge swings here. We're talking, let's aim for 5 to 10% of educating the middle on what hunting really is, on what conservation is, connecting those dots, getting more people on our side, and we win every battle. Now, of course, topple that with the right to hunt and fish, and getting that enshrined into state constitutions. That only strengthens everything we're trying to do here, right? Because now you're raising thresholds. Like, if this passes in Colorado, that would mean a ballot box biology, if that was attempted again, they would now have to get 55% plus one instead of what it is now, because it's not enshrined into the Constitution, 50% plus one vote when they bring it to the ballot. So there's so many layers here that we can do, but I don't know of any multi-billion-dollar industry that has decided to not, besides maybe like military contractors or something, but that has decided to not reach out to the general public. It's like the NBA saying, hey, we're only going to advertise to people who play basketball. That's what the hunting industry is. We only advertise to people who hunt, or people that we either want more hunters or buy our gear, keep hunting, buy the new backpack. That's it. If you turn on Outdoor Channel, besides Meat Eater has done a really good job, and I'm sure there's a few others now.
Wow, Charles, that
just hunting. Like,
you just said that. I mean, talk about an aha moment, like kick you in the ass. You're exactly right. And we need to do a better job of that.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, there's high level executives and super smart people in this space, and it's like, why aren't we doing this? This would be crazy in any other industry. I don't understand it. Like, what is holding us back? I can't even answer those questions. It's just, I just look at every other industry and how it works, and it's like, why are we doing it differently? But then at the same time, asking what the problem is. Like, well, I don't know, maybe basic marketing 101. Like, we're just not there. Like, we're not doing it at all. It's crazy. And I think a lot of it has to do with, as hunters, we like to be isolated, kind of the leave us alone mentality, right? I get that fully, but I also know that is a path to failure in today's landscape. That's a path to failure.
Well, it's the age old, if you don't tell your story, somebody will tell it for you, and you're probably not going to like how they tell it. And that's what's been going on, right? We have not told our story to the general public, so someone else is telling that story. And so that's part one. And then now part two is that we're in this position where a lot of what we have done historically has been reactionary. So now we're seeing proactivity. So we're seeing IOTR and HOWL and CRWM taking, ballots in and making a movement to enshrine these things. And so you're 100% right. You talked about the evolution of HOWL, how it was in reaction to, black bears in California. Like, it was reactionary. But that's not the way we're thinking now. And we have to be proactive. We actually have to go on the assault, because if we don't, it's just, we're going to continue to be, someone else is going to tell that story for us. And we've seen the outcome of it. And then we're having to dig a hole. And there's going to be times where we don't dig deep enough. Like, we're just trying to dig out of this hole that we're screwed. It's too much. And then we get run over. So if we don't start being reactive or proactive, we're going to get run over. And it's easy on an IP28 when you get this outlet, but then it gets nuanced, and then it gets complicated. And then there's these movements, right? These weird things that hunters do, like some crazy thing where, something gets in the eye of the public that, was some hunter making a stupid decision. And that's the movement that shuts something down or is the gateway. So if we're not proactive on this stuff, we're going to continue to just get railroaded. And that's what you've been doing. And I think it's awesome, like incredibly admirable. And we need more of that.
Those stupid actions by hunters or, those stupid actions by hunters. It's funny that those are the things that break the wall into the public. You'll see something like that, in the New York Times or something, whatever. You know what I mean? You'll see it in the mainstream media. And that's the only thing. If that's the only thing, if you're Samantha, 35-year-old soccer mom who's sitting at home and that's the only thing you've ever seen about hunting, then that might be the only thing you know about hunting. That might be the only time any type of messaging about hunting has ever touched you. So that's all you know, right? Again, and I'll use the basketball analogy. There's bad players in basketball. They do terrible things sometimes. Individuals do. It doesn't bring down the NBA. The NBA deals with it, right? But most people, they know what the NBA is, and they love the NBA, and they enjoy it, and they're constantly trying to improve. You know what I'm saying? But if the only time they were touched by what is this NBA? Who are these basketball players? And it's like, the one bad player who did this or assaulted this person or blah blah blah. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of a crazy analogy there, but that's kind of what it is for hunting. I think for a lot of people, they have only seen the bad. Which is typical. I mean, it's humans, right? There's always going to be bad. Like, there's always going to be bad individuals who do things, but we can't let them represent the entire hunting culture. But we have. We've kind of done that, but we go back and forth between ourselves, like you and me together, or whoever else, other hunters, and I can't believe this. That's not who we are. Blah blah blah. Well, that's great, but if nobody hears it, what is it worth? It's worth a pat on the back. That's, you know what I mean? That's it. Like, great job, Kyle. Great job. You go out and hunt, and you take your meat home, and you feed your family, and you go do this and that. But people need to know about it. It's just, that's the world we are in. I hate it that we have to defend it. I mean, this conversation 100 years ago wouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
Right. 50, 60 years ago, whatever, it wouldn't even be happening. But it is. It's the reality of what it is we're facing. So just like Teddy Roosevelt had to understand the reality of the situation, wildlife isn't going to be here in North America anymore if I don't do something, right? Just like the folks who started in the 20s and then eventually got to Pittman Robertson in 1937. And this was a pretty wild group it was like a group of like the Audubon Society, and I think a group of women that were birders and all these other conservation oriented people and hunters and anglers who came together and said, hey, how can we fix this? And they came up with Pittman Robertson, right? They realized the moment, they realized the situation that they're in, and they did something big. And I think that's where we are at. In 2026, today's July 15th, 2026, you cannot convince me otherwise that we are not in the same position where we have to do something big that is PR level, that's Teddy Roosevelt level. And why are we doing it? For the same reason, not for the same reasons, but it's necessary because we have to have an impact to keep this going. We have to have an impact so large and so big, and we have to do it now that our grandkids and beyond will look back and say, this is what they did on, July 15th, 2026, whatever the date is, that we kind of start this. This is why we still have this. And then they're going to face their own issues and their own problems, and they're going to have to come up with a solution. We don't know what that's going to be because we're not there, but we have to solve these problems that we are facing today. And it's going to take leaders to do that. Maybe it takes a summit of people together, but summits are one thing and talk is one thing. Doing things is another. And
one of the things you said
One
of the things you said on your Instagram reel last week when we took the petitions in to the Secretary of State, you said it several times. The time is now. This is our time. This is our time. And the hour, I think it's really important that we realize, just like you said, that, it's our time. It's hunters, fishermen, but it's also, people like me, hunting supporters. There's so many, like you said, the 35-year-old soccer mom who has a respect for it. So our time, it's that's a really broad term, but that hour is very encompassing. And I think it's our job to make sure that, we're more engaging, more inclusive. And I know that's kind of become a cliche term, inclusivity, but it's important that we do that, men, women, children, hopefully, my grandchildren one day, but very inclusive of who is supporting hunting and fishing and conservation. And instead of it being, the, Midwest white guy from, that's deer hunting. There's a lot more of us. We just need to work together on that.
Yeah. We just, telling stories. People love watching and learning about people. And once we bring it to the level of humanizing people, I think to some level, hunters haven't been humanized. Like hunters have been like characterized as something other what it is we are. Yeah. And we all complain about it, but it's like, and we all know, us and people we know the stories that can be told, and they need to be done well enough so they're professional enough. Like there's no reason why we cannot create something that can be on Netflix. Like there's no reason why. Absolutely not. It's definitely our time. We have no excuses. We do have the money. We have to prioritize it. We have to build teams. And back to the lead to the front thing. If a few of us do it, and I've seen this happen quite a bit lately, if a few of us do it and start something, others will follow. And that's just the way it works. But we have to have a few of us doing it. We got to set out and be those pioneers and say, this is what we're going to do. We have to be really intentional about it. I already know we're going to see success, and success attracts everyone else, right? It just does. It's just people are scared of taking the risk. I don't even see it as a risk anymore. I see it as like, this is the only way. There is no risk. It's not even a word that that's in my vocabulary when I look at these things. It's the only way. There is no risk. I guess risk would just be like not doing anything. That's where you're taking a risk. I know we'll be successful if we charge through and actually reach out to the middle ground. We only have up to go.
100%. And it's honestly one of the most important things that we can do in our space right now, because, it's the same old thing as hunter conservationists. If we're not looking after the landscape and we go away, then who's the replacement? And, there are movements, but they're exclusionary. They're protectionist. They just want people off the landscape. And that's the rewilding concept, right? And there's limitations to that. And we all know that there's not the scenario where, industry's going to be shut down completely. Like, we're not just going to go back to pre-contact where it's just natural landscapes. That ship has sailed. So if we're not basing things on science-based wildlife management, we're in a lot of trouble, and we need to manage our ecosystems. And if we're not doing it as hunter conservationists, I don't know who's going to do it. Nobody is. So the future, it's not just a future of hunting and sustainable use. It's a future of wildlife too, because if not, we're in a hurt locker for sure. Yeah. So, okay. Let's talk about the negative first and then the positive. Let's talk about IP28. So we've got Initiative Petition 28 in Oregon. You've been on the forefront, Charles, doing the heavy lifting on telling that story. I want to hear a little bit about what's going on there. Let's just do kind of a high level, what's at stake, what's going on, why it's important, and kind of the story that you're telling about what's going on there. And then we're going to hop over to Colorado and talk about the positivity there, the proactivity that we're doing. We're being proactive in both, but certainly more so in Colorado. And then we'll talk about next steps.
So IP28 would criminalize the killing of all animals in Oregon. And what I mean by that is, of course, hunting and fishing. So it's animals, including fish. Doesn't include insects. But so cows, sheep, deer, mule deer, bear, mice in a trap, rats in a trap, like traps at your home or traps at a restaurant for disease control, so on and so forth. It would criminalize those acts, and it would raise the criminal offense would be animal abuse. If you breed animals, whether it's artificial insemination or otherwise, that would be considered sexual assault. So that's kind of, I know it's really hard to believe, and I've met a lot of people recently go, that sounds a bit extreme. That can't be what this is. And well, the good thing about it is you can go to Yes on IP28, which is the proponents of IP28, go to their website, and they spell all of this out beautifully. Wonderfully. The one thing that I respect about this is they're very forthcoming about what it is. Very transparent. Here's what this is. Here's what it means. You got a huge Q&A on there. What about this? What about this? Yes, that too. Yes, that too. What about the tribal entities in Oregon? Yep, them too. They are not excluded. It's fantastic. So it's wildly extreme. It's the most extreme thing we've seen in our space as far as what it would do. Obviously, there's catastrophic economic impacts to something like this passing, right? That's one reason why this isn't going to pass this year. I got to sit down with David Michelson, who is the chief petitioner and proponent of IP28. I told him, hey, we're doing this documentary, and it'd only be fair to have you in it. So I sat down with him for over an hour, and he answered the questions. It was great. I mean, it was kind of coming from a different universe. Definitely not the universe that I live in. But he is using the ballot box because Oregon has a very, very lenient ballot box process. You have 2 years to get signatures. You can get your signatures all from one place. You can get them all from Portland, which is mostly where he's been getting his signatures from, is what he told me. You can also mail in signatures as well. Now, they all have to be verified. We have 2 years to do that. Now, comparatively speaking, in Colorado, you'd at most, I think, have 6 months to do it, something like that. So it's a huge, the time frame difference is huge there. But he's using it as a tool. He's using the ballot box as a tool to have this conversation. Do animals need to be killed anymore? That's really where he's getting at. He thinks that humans have essentially evolved to a place, and we can be creative enough and use technology to where we don't need to kill animals anymore. So he was actually very he saw really no difference between factory farming and me, who was a hunter who, kills his animal fast and brings the food home to eat. He really saw no difference in that, because a death is a death is a death, right? There was no difference. We had a great conversation. It was interesting. Definitely different than the folks that I usually speak with. So outside of that, we went all over Oregon, from Enterprise, Oregon, which is like 2 hours from Boise, to Newport, Oregon, which is on the coast, and everywhere in between. Basically interviewing folks who would be impacted. It's hard to find people who wouldn't be impacted by this in anywhere, and even in Portland as well. So, we went to the cattle farmers and the sheep farmers and the commercial fishermen and the hunters, and, just talked about IP28, but more it was like, what's your lifestyle? Show us your farm, show us your dairy, show us your cows. How does this operation work? Yeah, this is where cheese comes from. Yeah, this is where yogurt comes from. This is where milk comes from. This is where beef comes from. This is, you know what I mean? Like, what's the process? We saw 35,000 pound of black cod get offloaded at a commercial dock in Newport, by this awesome women-owned business seafood buyer there, Right Tide Seafood. And I was like, where does this fish go now? It was just so neat. And the guys getting off the boat that had been out there sleeping on the boat for 7 days, and just the process. People don't see that anymore. It seems silly. And I think it almost seems silly for hunters, because we know where our food comes from. We have that understanding and we think about it. It's very tangible for us. I think we bring things back to basics and just cover folks' lifestyles and where it is we are getting our food. I mean, it's still, 89% or whatever the heck it is of people who live in Oregon eat meat. So we have something in common there. You know what I mean? Whether you're in Portland or not. And I went to Portland and interviewed people on the street, and I had this crazy sign on like an A-frame sign on the back and in the front of me, and it said, "Meat is murder." No, sorry. It said, "Is meat murder?" It was asking a question. And it was so much fun, and it was so awesome, because people were attracted. They wanted to have the conversation. And some people were like, well, what do you mean? Are you saying meat is murder? Like, I don't want to offend you or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm asking you. Like, you're not going to offend me. I'll let you know my opinion when we're done, And they were such insightful conversations. And I'm, we've all heard, oh, this is just coming from Portland. And you can apply this to anything. It's the city people. They think this way. And then what happens is we pit city people against rural people. I never believe that ever for a second. Like, if you turn on the news, if you watch social media, you feel like there's monsters everywhere. Oh my gosh. I live in San Francisco, right? And I hear everything about San Francisco and how bad it is and all that. And sure, there's bad parts of San Francisco. There's also, 8 million people living in a 60-mile strip here. Of course, there's going to be, you can find all types, right? I think most people are still reasonable. I think most people have, you're going to find a difference of opinion when you actually go with them and talk about an issue. I never go in, I don't, wear politics on my sleeve. It's not my identity, kind of a thing. I think that's kind of pretty silly when you think about it. But if you go into a conversation where that's not a factor and you just really want to know people and connect with people, you have awesome conversations, even if you disagree with them. But what I've found is when you talk about hunting and you talk about food and you're having an honest, open conversation about it, kind of vulnerable, I'm having a hard time finding these monsters that apparently exist. Like the world that we see through the screen, it's not there. And the biggest part of, I think, of our success, and you can probably apply this to anything, is we have to be face to face. We have to be looking at each other in the eyes. It's like, it might sound kind of weird. It probably does sound kind of weird, but I think there's something to where if you're so close to somebody, not in a weird way, but you're so close to somebody, it's like, oh, they had on perfume, or, oh, this guy just got off a dairy ranch. So close you can smell it. There's something that happens there, right? There's something important there. And if we lose the ability to have conversations in person like this and come together, and only have these conversations online or through the news, or let the news dictate how we're supposed to feel about each other, then the division's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You can apply that to whatever you want, but we're talking about hunting. I think that's what we have to do. We got to make this personal. So, yeah, we went and interviewed a bunch of people face to face and had amazing conversations, and I'm excited to show, including with, the enemy, right? Including with David Michelson. And we disagree, and we're going to continue to disagree. I asked him to go hunting with me. It was crazy. He kind of thought about it. Like, he just said he fears, like, if I was going to go shoot something, that he would, like, stand in front of it or whatever. I said, all right, fair enough. I don't want you to do that. But, but what I was asking him was, have you engaged with these folks? Have you gone out to a farm? Have you gone out to a ranch? And he has, to where when he's trying to get people to sign this, to get it on the ballot, he has at that level. And he said, for the most part, they've been really actually great conversations. I was like, yeah, but have you gone out to these places? Because you're considering this animal abuse. Can you identify the animal abuse? Have you been on their ranches? Have you been at the dairy farms? Have you been at these places? And he hadn't. So that's what I was trying to get him, to kind of do. I think that's important,
Charles,
not that he change his mind. I don't know. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. But so that's what we're covering. And again, it's the opportunity that I see here with what we can do with this to bring more support and traction to this awesome way of life. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, this awesome way of life.
Can you talk a little bit about what you think his end game is? So you talked about like making like this extreme position, and it seems extreme at the time, and then there's this acceptance over time. There's that part of it. But do you also think there's like a media component where it's like, it's so outlandish, it's going to be all over the media and it's going to garner support that way? Can you just touch a little bit on like the logic and the strategy that you think he's planning, and maybe even the stuff that he's not telling you? Obviously, he's going to tell you what he wants you to think. But what are you seeing? Like, you think after interviewing him and the research you've done?
So I asked him if he's going to bring this back, and yeah, he said he thinks so. And I said, is the message going to be dialed back a little bit? Because originally, before speaking with him and just looking at this on paper, I said, well, that's the plan. They're going to dial this back. And he said they wouldn't. I said, no, this is truly how I feel. And I think this should be the messaging. We shouldn't take a segment of wildlife or animals out and now only just try and, put regulations on them. Like, it should be the whole thing. Right. Which I really respected that. I don't know if that's the smartest thing in the world if I was him, but that's the way they're going. I think his goal here, again, is to have the conversation and to get, he said he wants truck drivers to be talking about this. He compares it to the women's suffrage movement. So when it first was brought up, it was the craziest idea ever. and roundly rejected. And it was for quite some time until it wasn't. Right? So he's under absolutely no, he understands this isn't just going to magically pass someday. He says, if this was ever to pass someday in my lifetime, Oregon will already be a completely different place, because the mindset of people would have changed before the vote came. The people would have already started making these decisions on their own, which I think is the smartest part about this whole thing. And it's also, I think, the biggest thing that we should take from this isn't about we just have to win getting the votes at the ballot box, right? And I think a lot of folks are making it that. It's like it's becoming like a fundraiser, like, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to like pick on folks or anything. I'm not, because I understand the reaction, but like writing blogs or having a website about it, like, we're opposed to IP20. Well, of course you're opposed to IP28. That's not going to do anything. We have to insert ourselves into the conversation of what's really going on here. That's what he's doing, right? And his argument will, I think, gain some supporters. Like he can make it very like, oh wow. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I would think, oh yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe all these animals don't need to die anymore. Maybe we've evolved past that, and this is a part of human evolution. And I mean, I'll let him speak for himself, in the documentary or whatever. But it's an interesting conversation, and for people who don't know any better, and for people, listen to this is crazy, but it's true. I asked him what his connection to wildlife was. I said, A, do you have any pets? He doesn't have any pets. He thinks that they are, makes it hard on travel, which they do. And it's just a financial burden. And I said, well, what about, like, is there something, like, do you go hiking? Do you go, like, I want to go view nature. I want to go try and find some mule deer or something. I said, no. He goes, I like watching the squirrels in my yard or something, like in his backyard or whatever. Like, I was like, what? Like, that's your connection to, it just didn't make any sense to me. But there's a lot of people like that. And if that's the lens that they're looking through, I mean, where I live here, it's just outside of San Francisco. There's deer all over the place, and there's also mountain lions walking down our sidewalks. That to me is not wild. A lot of people think that that's wild. I think that's not what wild is to me. But if that's the lens people are looking through, and you just see a deer walking up to your yard, and you walk out the front door and it just stands there and looks at you and has absolutely no fear of you. And the same thing happens with mountain lions. They just stare at you and they really don't have a fear of you. Maybe people can start to think, they seem harmless. They're fine. We just give them respect and we can all coexist. That's the magic word everybody uses. I can see it gaining support. And what will happen is it'll start in a city first. Or a town will pass it, right? And then that grows and that grows and that grows. And then what does that look like in 30, 40, 50 years? And I think we can all probably come up with examples of, I'm sure 60 years ago, if I was to go back in time and say, hey guys, you're going to be facing an anti-hunting movement that wants to get rid of this, that. We have to do something now to get rid of it. I would probably be laughed at. So that's his game plan. Does that make sense? Like, that's the long game. And I think it's the same kind of long game that we need to have, just obviously with a different outcome.
I look at trapping, you so much of what you're talking about. I'm thinking, you look at trapping, like 100 years ago, this, like, North America was built on the trapping industry. And if we ever thought, and now there's scenarios where there's trapping's banned in Colorado or wherever, like these and what the trapping industry is going through now. And it's like, it's just mainstream. We know that's a thing. And many people want to just it to be gone. And trapping's they're on the back foot trying to defend the industry. In many cases, they've lost it. And 100 years ago, that would have never, ever entered anybody's mind. It just wasn't even like, that was like, no, like we'd all be dead if we didn't have this. That's the only reason we exist. So I think it's naive to think that, that is hunting. We just continue to do what we do. And, it's interesting, Charles, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, is that through our One Campfire initiative, we get pushback. People like, that's a waste of money. Why are you guys doing that? That's stupid. Just go and hunt. And you know what? You might be okay for your generation, but it's like, it's interesting. How much do you hear of that? Because I would say generally we have broad support for our program, but there are people that oppose it and they think you're wasting your money.
Yeah. There's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be people. I mean, that's the story of anybody who's ever done anything, right? Everyone said you couldn't do it. Of course. I think it's hard for people to fully, like, I'm in the weeds of this stuff all the time. That's all I think about. So I have a hard time sometimes communicating all that in a short time period, unless you're my wife, because she just gets to hear it all, she can finally put it together. But there's just so many things that I have in my head that I want to do. And then I talk with other people. Like if I call up Dan and we talk about this, yeah, him and I can talk about it all day long. We think about this stuff, and similar people who are kind of on this ride, like on this level, like this is where we need to get to. That's easy, but taking somebody from zero and bringing them up to whatever, to this level to understand in a relatively quick amount of time is kind of hard. And it makes sense. Like if you've got a day job and you're consumed with this, and then you got to go home and bring your kids to practice, and then next thing you know, it's you're ready for bed. You don't have time to process all this stuff. So I guess it just doesn't matter. Yeah, there's going to be naysayers. Go out and do it. They'll recognize it when they see it successful and they go, oh, wow. Yeah, that was a good idea. They probably won't even say that. They'll just jump on and be like, yeah, we're on. Always believed it. Knew you could do it. That's just, you know what I mean? You just have to go do it. You just got to make it happen.
In Colorado, with the wolf reintroduction, my own family, we were like, that'll never happen. So we did not engage. We were just like, no big shake. And then it happened. And it was like, what in the hell were we thinking? So then even with 127, mountain lion, bobcat, and lynx.
Yeah.
Again, there was still that, somebody else will do it. But it was like, all right, get involved. And now with the constitutional, right to hunt and fish, more and more people are looking back saying, wow, the wolves didn't pass by much. And really 127, it wasn't a landslide. It was a good win, but it was not a landslide.
Yeah.
And, but it's that, that'll never happen. It's fine. And it's just that, and I love the idea of the heritage, because the three of us sitting here, this is our heritage, and so when you're talking to somebody like David, who it's not his heritage, he doesn't own a dog, he doesn't have any connection with hunting, fishing, conservation, doesn't like to go for, so it's that. And if he's the one that's speaking loudest, he's the one that's going to be heard. And so we have to speak louder, and I will always go with, kindness, humility. And I think that's what, I really think that's what you do a very good job of.
It's just being human. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's always been hunters, but not everyone has always been a hunter, right? But for most of history, people understood what hunting was and why it was, and it's been necessary, I guess, for different reasons, throughout history, of course. We use it personally, like individually, we use it for some of the same reasons, like to feed ourselves, but we could go to the grocery store if we wanted to, where grocery stores didn't exist anymore. But today, just in the United States, where there's 350 million people, we have this thing called wildlife management, and conservation, which I think is maybe the hinge point here. That's what people don't understand, is why humans need to be involved with managing wildlife. That's where these ideas of rewilding come in, and these ideas of, I like coexistence, but I define it differently. I think what they're talking about is actually cohabitation. Like, if you look at their outcomes, the definition I would give to that is cohabitation, which I don't think is reality. I don't think is possible. Coexistence is we can exist for sure together, but there's a healthy fear of us. Like, some animals live well along fence lines, some don't. Grizzly bears and wolves, I don't think live well along fence lines with people. Deer do. Mountain lions even can, to an extent. But wolves and grizzly, I think it's an important conversation. Like, you'll hear something like keystone species. We hear this in California. There's a bill to bring grizzly bears back to California. And I think grizzly bears are awesome. I do. Do I think it's a good idea to bring it into a state where, yes, the last grizzly bear was like 100 years ago, and I don't know how many people were living in California 100 years ago, but it wasn't a whole bunch. And that was the last grizzly bear. So, but today, what I do know is there's 40 million people living in California. From the grizzly bear's perspective, tell me why it's a good idea to take a grizzly bear that is in way more isolation than it would be in California. Tell me why that's actually a good idea for the grizzly bear, to remove it from wherever it is and bring it to this place where it's prone to nothing but conflict. I get it. The grizzly bear is on our state flag. I get that. But we have to have the conversation about how much the world has changed. And if we bring grizzly bears here, what does that really mean? Like, is it just the idea of having a grizzly bear here, or do we want to actually flourish and survive? Flourish and surviving means what? Well, then humans are then going to have to do something differently in California. There's just as many people living in California as there are, like, if you were to take what we call the Western United States, right? If you were to remove California, you got basically 40 million people. You add California is that big. 40 million people, right? We're going to bring an apex predator like grizzly bear into California and give it nothing but conflict. I don't know if that's a good idea. And that's where we have to understand management and human involvement on all levels, on development, habitat, either production or destruction or conservation, whatever it is. All of these things play into that. And I think the same argument can be made for the introduction of wolves in by ballot box in Colorado. Half of them are dead. And why are half of them dead? I think most of it's due to conflict. You brought wolves that some of them were in Oregon, which was crazy traveling Oregon. I think there's 4 million people in Oregon. The whole state. 4 million people. I can drive 60 miles and see 8 million people. That's the amount of people living. So they brought some wolves from Oregon, and they brought some wolves from Canada. Dropped them in the Colorado, where there's 6 point some million people, right? And by the way, the wolves from Oregon were the wolves that were known livestock depredators. Those are the ones that they removed. Put them in the Colorado, and half of them are dead now. The one thing that I will agree with PETA is PETA thinks that that's a form of animal abuse. PETA is actually against those reintroduction efforts because of the outcomes, because of what happens. That's what I've read. I don't think that's good for the wolves. I think it's good for fundraising. It's good for these ideas that the problem with rewilding is that to get there, you actually have to rewind. Like they're throwing out the reality that there's 350 million people in the United States. You can't just say, hey, what did nature look like 300 years ago? Let's bring that back. Unless you have a plan of getting rid of, 90% of the people. Like it's just but on paper, it sounds good. If you don't know any better, those kinds of things sound good. Like, gosh, yes, let's bring grizzly bears here. The San Francisco Bay Area was the grizzly bear's favorite habitat. Could you imagine? I mean, of course, they're not proposing that because they see the absurdity of that. You know what I mean? But the rest of California, well, those people, they can deal with it.
And that's exactly what we're seeing in Colorado. It's like, oh, well, it's okay for those guys.
Yeah.
But, if they were to come into, my town, because I'm on the Front Range, it's like, oh, no, that's that doesn't work. But it's okay in the mountains. Now, and it doesn't matter that the farmers or the ranchers, oh, it's a cow. Oh, it's a sheep. It doesn't matter that that's their livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, and I agree with you. I don't think it's fair to the wolves. And most people think in Colorado, I think you would say wolves are fantastic. They're beautiful. And are they, apex creatures who need to be respected? Absolutely, they do. But it's a big but.
When that happened in Colorado, when we did the translocation, obviously, Jann, you reached out, and John Legner and a few others reached out on it and said, hey, what's like, and
what are you doing, BC?
What the hell are you guys doing in BC? So I talked to the provincial government on it and my contacts there, and sort of didn't broadly speak to them, but some of the key individuals, some people that were involved in it. And they're just like, what's the problem? This is amazing. Like, we're not like we've got a caribou recovery problem. We're trying to reduce numbers there. So we export them and rewild them somewhere else. Like, that's great for the resource. It's great for wolves. And I'm like, they looked at me like I had a second head. They had no clue about what I was talking about. It just absolutely, to them, that doesn't. And honestly, some of them were hunters. They're like, well, there's broad support for it in the government here, and it's positive for our social license within the province. I'm like, yeah, but is this the right thing? Like, based on science-based wildlife management, is this smart? And is it good for those wolves? Probably not. I guess their argument is, well, it's better than, is killing a wolf better? I guess that's probably the counter argument. So I guess if you look from only that, but they couldn't understand that's a bad thing. They were like, that doesn't make sense. So,
well, the other part on top of that is management of wolves, management of grizzly bears. I also don't see that as a part of the plan. And I think that it would help. I'm sure it would change a lot of minds. Like, okay, we're going to have grizzly bears in California. Okay, we're going to have wolves in Colorado. But there's no management plan. As soon as that comes up, it immediately goes to, oh, here we go again. Hunters are just they're going to wipe out all the wolves. They're going to wipe out all the grizzly bears. Management is a real, like, it's almost become, to the rewilders, they hate that. They hate management. They're like, oh, that's just going to bring back what happened, with the fur markets and the meat markets and all that. Like, that's what they think is going to happen. But what's crazy is, like, we've been managing wildlife. Our states have had the North American model is what has made this so successful. But again, people don't know that. I mean, you ask a lot of hunters, they don't even know what Pittman Robertson is. So of course, non-hunters don't know what the heck it is. Most non-hunters, they don't know that we have state agencies. I talk to Uber drivers when I get in Ubers, when we have conversations and stuff like that. so many of them have told me the same thing. They're like, oh, I just kind of thought you went and got a gun. Like, yeah, I know you have to get a gun license for that, but then you just go out into the woods and then whatever it is you're hunting. Like, they have no idea there's quotas and seasons and bag limits and species take, just all of those details completely lost. But once they know those things, they're like, oh, it's regulated? Like, I'm telling you guys, starting at zero. Like, most people just don't know those things. But to bring this full circle, Prop 127, Colorado, and I love to say it because everyone likes to politicize it, a blue state, right? What? Prop 127 was defeated. Why? Because for the first time ever, expense and focus and energy was used on educating the general public of Colorado. It wasn't hunters it wasn't all of a sudden, 3 million hunters showed up to the ballot, to the ballot box. This was decided upon the people of Colorado, and what won? Education won. If we don't, right there should tell us what we can do. And this wasn't mule deer hunting. This was mountain lion hunting, which most hunters don't even hunt, right? It
was grassroots. I mean, it was, and it wasn't grassroots hunters and fishermen. It was, again, that 35-year-old soccer mom who's like, did you hear about this? It was truly, when you looked at the people that were at the Capitol, the 127 signs that were in yards, you're thinking, wow, really? You have you put up, when we were distributing signs, it wasn't necessarily, yes, the gun shops, everybody had a part of it, but it was very interesting to see that it was grassroots, and it was education, lots of education. And it wasn't necessarily commercials and that type of thing. It was standing at Shields. We had one gentleman who stood on the Boulder Pearl Street Mall, and Boulder's quite liberal, stood on the Pearl Street Mall every weekend and explained this to people. It was fantastic.
So right there's your proof. That's proof in the pudding, right? Education works. And if you can take an issue like mountain lion hunting to defend mountain lion management in Colorado, that's what was at stake. And to tie this in to the right to hunt and fish, because I know you want to talk about that, why this is so important. We had to raise, like the hunting community, everybody that was involved in Prop 127. I think it was like 3.1 million altogether is what went into everything. Why did that money have to be raised? That money had to be raised to defeat a false narrative, right? That money had to be raised to defeat an emotionally based campaign that, frankly, stated a lot of lies about just like what's on paper about mountain lion management. You know what I mean? Had that money not been raised, the most regulated hunt in Colorado, wildlife management, more of wildlife management in Colorado that comes from the experts from CPW would have been done away with, right? It would have been another check mark. That all started in 2020 with wolves being on the ballot box. And I think it's an important distinction. I don't want to argue about should wolves be in Colorado or not. I'm arguing about should these decisions be made on the ballot, because we don't have decisions on the ballot that say, hey, here's a civil engineering issue. We're going to build this bridge. Let's bring it to the people. Let's have them vote on it, right? And facts about, structural engineering, that doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. It's just, we got a bunch of money and we want to convince people we want to do it this way. Will the bridge fall apart? I don't know. We're going to say it's not, but the experts don't need to be involved, right? Conservation groups, hunting groups had to spend over $3 million, which to my knowledge is the most that's ever been spent on a campaign in the United States for hunting that I'm aware of, up until then. And that money could have been used elsewhere. right? The right to hunt and fish, to get that enshrined in the Constitution in Colorado, would raise the bar to where now you have to get it to 55%. Historically, if you look at ballot box issues, you're looking at, what was it in 2020 with I think the difference was like 35,000 votes. It's like 1.3%, something like that. So it was, 51 to 49, whatever it was. This raises the threshold to 55%. So if these groups want to bring something back through the ballot box, it's a lot harder for them to do that, right? Which it should be, because this is, these kind of decisions should be left up, I think, to the experts, should be left to the commissions and the departments, which those aren't perfect spaces either, but at least the battle and the debate and the decision making can be had there. Secondly, I think, and that same thing can be applied to a legislative bill as well. Like if a legislator just comes out and says, like Scott Wiener here in San Francisco, this is how HOWL got its start. There was a Senate bill to ban bear hunting in California. Just don't need bear hunting anymore. No scientific reason for it at all. We just don't need it. We don't think it's necessary anymore. Having a right to hunt and fish enshrined in the Constitution, basically, to me, it says, if we're going to make wildlife decisions, they need to be based on science. They need to be based on data, right? They're not just going to be based on, here's the next idea, here's the next, multi-million-dollar campaign, so one side can fundraise off the other and whatever, blah, 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 blah. These decisions are important. Wildlife is important for all of Coloradans, and they need to be narrowed down to science-based, to data-based. And the people making these decisions, we already have these folks in each state. That's where it should rest. And let's set up some protections around wildlife conservation and make it harder for situations like Prop 127 to come about. And I think for Coloradans, they realized that. They realized Prop 127 was BS, and they voted against it. But again, think about it. We had to spend over $3 million that could have been spent on what? And this is where, this could go back to public education again, but I know a lot of those organizations that donated money and gave money and raised money, they are typically spending money on habitat, right? They are typically, and so now they had less of that money to spend, is the way I look at it. So it was a net negative for wildlife. It's a net negative for wildlife to have these things on the ballot because of where the money gets spent. But yeah, besides that, it's also a big poll. And I'm convinced that most people, if you were to poll everybody, this is a statewide poll, having it on the ballot, is the right to hunt and fish something to be protected? The results of that poll will be very telling. Very telling. And I think it's worth it I'm glad it's being done. It's very well worth it to have this. This is a proactive step. Again, that we haven't seen much of. IOTR did it in Florida, where they needed 60% of the vote because it's a constitutional amendment, and they ended up getting 67% of the vote there. And to show that it's not a political issue. It's very bipartisan. They got 1 million more votes in Florida for the right to hunt and fish, Amendment 2, than were cast for Donald Trump. 1 million more.
Yeah.
So this isn't I know a lot of people, they try and make it this isn't a Republican thing. It's not a Democrat thing. It's not an independent thing. Hunting and fishing is something that all of us do. It's awesome.
Yeah. Charles, not going to do the deep dive today on Colorado and constitutional right to hunt and fish. We kind of touched on it. For anyone that is interested on that, we did a podcast with Dan Gates a couple of weeks back, so you can go back and listen to that one. Love to. Obviously, you're an authority on that, Charles. You were there. You've been actively involved. Love to chat more on it, but just in the interest of time today, I've already taken a big chunk of your morning out here. Both you and Jann. And maybe we get you back on, but we'll kind of leave it where that is for now. I guess to close out, let's talk about next steps or the call to action. So, what are you thinking about? You're obviously a leader, a forward thinker, and it's something you're living in this world. So it's something that you think about every day. Not asking for the playbook for the antes, but what's your next steps? Where do we go from here, and what's the call to action? What does the hunting community need to do?
On what topic are we about?
Mainly, just kind of big picture. Like, let's not go on microcosms like IP28. Not saying that these aren't big issues or constitutional right to hunt and fish. I think as a community, what do we need to think about? Where do we go as a hunting community? What are some of the priorities for us moving forward? And what do hunters? If you could only say one thing to hunters moving forward that that's an important message that you feel we need to do in our space, what would that message be?
Wow. One message to hunters.
One message, that's it. That's all you got. Your parting wish.
Wow.
No
I don't
pressure.
know if I have that. I think I don't know if there is one message because we're all so different.
We had lunch the other day. You kept talking about, connecting and engaging and voting. And, I know that's 3 words, but, really it's that vote. We're terrible voters, but engage.
Yeah, there's so many different.
Yeah,
there's so many different levels to the. I'll tell you what we're doing, and it's starting with the film on IP28, but our campaign, and I can show you. I'll show you guys privately because I have a little video that I made on this. We're just going to launch we're going to find a city and we're going to launch a campaign and show folks. Like, you're going to see billboards on a highway, right? You're going to see messaging that is completely different messaging than what we have ever seen because it's not meant for us. So there's going to be real dollars spent to put this stuff into the mainstream. And that's the vehicle that I want to build, because along with that, and along with, to bring David Michelson back into it, that starts our conversation too. We can put compelling statements out there. We can put statements and messages and ideas and words that challenge people, that make people curious, that make people want to know more. Put a story in front of their face, put a compelling story in front of their face that they watch. The more we do that, the more people we have on our side. And it's not about like just getting people on our side. It's not just about persuasion. I truly believe in this. Like, I truly believe we have a good message. I truly believe that A, hunting is human. B, it's an intrinsic human value. C, that hunting, especially in today's landscape, the way that is shaped with the North American model, that it's actually good for wildlife. If we can get that message across, where people go, wow, I didn't know all this. This is actually good for wildlife. As crazy as that might sound at first, but now that I've learned about it, and I've learned where the money goes, and how management works, and all the things, hunting is good for wildlife. Those are the things I want to get across. Those are the things I think people should be attracted to. If you are a hunter and you want something to get done that we don't have, to work in a space that we don't work in, if you want to have an impact, if you want to stop facing these issues that we constantly hear about, we have to start solving them. I think that's part of the solution. I want to someday not do this anymore. I want to work myself out of a job, right? And I actually think we can, on this, I think we can get there. I do.
That's awesome. Well, sir, I appreciate all you do. Lots to unpack there, and maybe we circle back and we do this again in not too distant future, because there's still lots to unpack, lots of issues to get behind. And offline here, I want to chat with you because love to see if we can do a few things together. One thing I'd love to see is, can we bring your IP28 film to British Columbia? I'd love to do a few showings up here. See if that aligns with what you guys are doing, if that works out at all. So, awesome. Jann, as always, appreciate you, and lots to unpack. And thanks again, Charles, for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jann.